What is going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. Now today's episode, I'm going to go and show you guys how to build a custom desk using hardwood floor planks. This is something that you can do at home, so I'm going to go ahead and show you all the steps involved. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started on that desk. Okay, first things first, I'm making a custom desk using pre-finished hardwood flooring. You just basically need a structure. So what I'm using is a 3/4 inch 4x8 sheet of plywood. And my dimensions is going to be 6.5 by 6.5, and the desk is going to be 2.5 feet deep. So on the main 4x8 sheet of plywood, I'm going to make a small L section. I've already marked it out, and I'm going to cut that out with my circular saw. And then I'm going to need to glue a small extension, which is about 2.5 by 2.5 on one side, because the plywood is 8 foot by 4 foot, and basically I need this thing to be 6.5 on this side and 6.5 on this side. So I'm gonna go ahead and make the cuts, and once I make the cuts, I'll take the measurements from here to here, make the cut on the secondary panel, and then we'll glue these panels together, and basically we're gonna have a big L shape. So let's go ahead, put on our eye protection, ear protection, and go ahead and use that circular saw and get to work. All right, and here's where we're at with the plywood structure. Now, as you can see, that's my main joint right there. That's all I can have, because that's basically 4 foot from that section to that section right there. So I had to make another 2.5 foot section so I can have a 6.5 length. This is also 6.5 length as well, and the depth of this is 2.5. Now, when I put my glue joint right there, obviously I've got 2 wood clamps. Basically, when you compress those wood pieces together, when you glue it, that adds significant strength right there. So the next step of the process, let's go ahead and let that glue cure for a few hours. We can go ahead and take the clamps off, and we can get this thing upstairs and we can start building this thing. But here's the saws I use. Basically, this is my circular saw. This makes the main cuts on the wood, and I used a hand saw right there in the corner. And as most people know, when you use a circular saw to make cuts on the corner, you'll have to go past that line, and I don't want that jagged edge right there. So the hand saw did its duty in making a nice clean cut in that corner. And then whenever you draw out your lines, make sure you use a square. Make sure everything's nice and straight. Okay, let's go ahead and put the tools up, let the glue cure, and then we'll go ahead and get this thing upstairs and we'll go next step. All right, the giant plywood piece we cut in the driveway is safely upstairs in the office, which will be a final resting place. Now I've got some makeshift supports in place using cardboard boxes and plastic storage containers, and also a toilet box right there. But anyhow, right here is this is our glue joint. So this is where I'm gonna start all my work right here. And what my point is I'm gonna reinforce this joint right here with having all the wood going across right there, as opposed to starting on this side right here. That way your wood's gonna be, going in this orientation. It's not gonna supply the strength to really support this glue joint right here. So it is imperative that you reinforce this joint using wood floor going across this direction. Okay, so the first step of the process, installing the wood planks on top of this plywood, is the most important, because the first layer needs to be dead straight. Now I've got this one really long piece out of the wood box, and I basically put my metal square against it. I believe this thing is dead straight. I'm gonna do a few more checks, but we need to be 100% positive that this first row is dead straight. That way the other wood layers will fall into place correctly. So in the interim, I'm gonna go ahead, do some more double checks on this piece to make sure it's dead straight. If it's not, I'm gonna try and find a piece that's pretty long to go across here to a minimum about right there, because basically we need to reinforce this glue joint right there. So once I find the correct pieces of what's gonna go on the first row, I'm gonna cut them to size on a miter saw, and I'll come back and show you guys how to attach it to this plywood platform. Okay, first wood row is mocked up in position. Use the one really long board on this corner because basically I'm gonna have a desk mount monitor system that clamps this corner, and I don't want a small joint right there. And as you can see, the long board is going well across the glue joint right there, which is what we want. And then I got a smaller piece on this end. So I took my metal framing square and just went along the way just to make sure that this thing is straight. Anyways, I got the clamps in position mocked up because basically there's a small bow on this plywood. So once we have a few wood rows, it'll straighten this wood bow out. Okay, so the first thing to do before we go ahead and secure it to the plywood base, I'm gonna flip over this wood. And I'm gonna take my wood glue and I'm gonna make a few beads on the bottom side of this piece of wood. So one bead right there, probably another bead right there, another bead right there. I don't think we need to do all four, because you can see there's some grooves here on the underside. So once we have some wood glue, don't use too much. We'll go ahead and put this in position. And with the first row, we're basically clamping this face to the bottom side. On the other rows going forward, we're basically gonna be clamping this direction against the wood right there. So once we have it clamped to position, we're gonna go ahead and take your drill, and we're gonna pre-drill. Let me show you what's going on with that. So here's the screws I'll be using. These are Deckmate 1 1/4, and these have the star shape. So these are non-slip screws. I love these things. They are well worth the money over the typical screws. And this is the impact driver with the special bit in place right there we'll be using. Okay, we definitely need to pre-drill all the holes for your screws. Otherwise, you're gonna be splitting some wood. So don't be driving screws without pre-drilling. So to set up the drill, you wanna have a drill bit slightly smaller than the wood screw you use. And in order to set up the drill, you wanna go ahead, take a screw, hold it up against the drill bit, against the chuck, and make sure that the drill bit does not surpass the wood screw right there. So it's basically dead even right there. Okay, some information on attaching the screws on the side of the plywood. Basically where we want to drill is right in the center of this rib right there. So in order to get the best accuracy, you're going to go ahead and set the depth of your tape measure, just like so. And then we'll go on the underside of the plywood and basically hold this tape measure on the edge and just go along every 8 inches or 12 inches, however you want to space your screws. And then just go ahead, take a pencil mark on the end of the tape measure, and that's where you basically take the drill and drill upwards, and then we'll follow up with the impact driver and drill the screw in. So let's go ahead and do our first row. This is the most important of this construction right here. And our first and most important wood strip has been clamped, pre-drilled, and screwed successfully. And just to make sure that this first row was glued and screwed straight, basically I took a measurement from this front lip over to the edge right there, a few times down the row. Also took my framing square and braced it across the joint right here. And look how straight that is. That way we got a perfect intersection with those two boards right there. Okay, so the next step of the process, we're gonna go ahead and start a second row. Now I've got the wood laid out in this pile right here. That's one box. And I got the wood laid out from box number 2. I'm gonna try and mix and match as best I can. I don't wanna use up all this and then use up all that. So we're gonna basically have some variation. Now, in my opinion, the most tedious process in build this desk is basically choosing which boards you wanna go where, because you're gonna be staring at these things for years on end. But what we're trying to do is basically brace this glue joint right here. So I don't wanna leave any short boards right there. I don't wanna have an intersection like that and going forward. I wanna basically have coverage going across that joint at all times. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and make my board selection out of these 2 piles. Now, when we clamp the first row, this is basically the orientation of the clamp. And then for the second row going forward, this is what we wanna do. So basically the clamp's gonna be looking like that. So once we put some glue on the underside of the board, we'll basically clamp this thing tight, go on the underside, take a measurement of where that lip's at, go ahead and make some marks, pre-drill, run the screws up, and we'll basically move on to the next boards going down the row. So that's basically most of the installation going forward until we get to that corner right there. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and speed up the filming process. I don't wanna bore you guys with me choosing wood, so it's gonna go relatively fast from here. Let's go ahead and get this desk built. Okay, the worst row is finally complete. Now, as you can see, I have a thin strip, about a 1/2 inch on this final row right here. Now, I want this dimension to be exactly 30 inches and not 29.5. So that's the reason why I add this 1/2 inch strip. Basically took this on the table saw and ripped it down. And then over here, I basically did a combination of the table saw And to make this cut, I did this on the miter saw, making a very careful cut right there. So go ahead and probably clean this up before we go ahead and dress up the outer perimeter. But this is the most tedious cut right here. I had to do a lot of measuring and making sure everything fit tight. So I'm pretty happy so far of how it's come along. So I'm gonna go ahead, finish this row off with this piece right here. And we got just a small section, so this thing should go pretty quick. The more we proceed with this table, the better it's looking. And we've got the main part done right here. And right there is the glue joint. So this thing is reinforced properly right there. And as far as the work is remaining with the pre-finished wood planks, is this small section right there. So this should go along pretty quick. It's either gonna be one long board or basically two boards, as opposed to this section, which required about 2, 3, 4 boards. So let's go ahead and finish off this small section right here, and then we'll be able to work on the perimeter. All right, this has taken quite a while, choosing the right pieces of wood to go in place. And we're finally at the last strip. Let me show you what's going on. So I've got the final strip mocked in position. And as you can see, there's a slight overhang with this lip right here. So I'm gonna take this final piece, set up the table saw, and we're gonna rip off the tongue. I don't know if you can capture this image on camera, but as you can see, there's about 1/32 overhang. Let me show what's on the other side. And then moving on to the right side, this is almost flush. So basically what that means is off by 1/32 of an inch from being square from one side to another on a 6'6" run. That's pretty darn good right there. Okay, I got a few pieces of scrap wood right here. And what I'm gonna do, once I set the table saw with the fence, I'm gonna run a few pieces through. I'm gonna basically mock it up in position because I don't wanna be practicing with my final piece right here. So once I'm happy with the right amount of overhang with this piece of wood for the scrap, then I'll go ahead and take my nice piece and run it through. So let's go ahead and set the table saw and we'll start making some cuts in preparation for our last piece. Alrighty guys, that's all the time I got left for today's episode. Now the next installment, we're gonna take those edges and cut them straight flush. We've also got some incredible custom desk legs that I'm out to underside and I can't wait to show you. And I hope you guys can join us for the next installment as we finish this desk up. And if you found this video helpful and entertaining, please give me a thumbs up. Thanks for watching and have a fantastic day.